Hi Andy, lovely to meet up with you and begin doing some work on your game. Just a quick recap on the key points that we covered during your session relating to longer chip shots, shorter pitch shots, etc. Main issue was getting a stance that was a little bit more appropriate initially for the type of shot we're playing here, which was about a 20-30 yard sort of long chip pitch type shot with quite a wide stance. So a wide stance by itself will start to shallow out the angle of attack. So the only way we can create any descent is by continuously moving the ball further and further back from the centre of the swing. The further back the ball goes, contact becomes slightly better, but we're getting rid of all the loft on the golf club that we need to play the shots that we're faced with around the green. So initially we had a very wide stance and we would steepen the angle of attack by moving the ball further and further back in the stance, de-lofting the club, exposing the leading edge, etc. Not a very forgiving or consistent way of chipping or pitching. So the first thing we did was narrow the stance. Once we narrow the stance, the centre of the arc, the left shoulder, naturally moves out in front of the golf ball. So the descending blow is in there by default. So straight away the contact improved. But what we're able to do now is maintain the loft that's on the golf club, so we don't have to keep moving this ball further and further back to get good contact. We just narrowed the stance. The ball is actually now, if you use the feet as a reference point, which most people do, further forward in the stance than it was. So we're going to have a little bit more loft. We're going to have the descent is built in at address. We don't need to go looking for it during the downswing. So a little bit of contradiction going on the left, much more appropriate setup on the right. Initially with the action, because of the stance width, the club went back very low to the ground, relatively wide, and then the downswing was an attempt to steepen the angle of descent, make better contact, maintain the shaft lean, something again, taking loft off the club, exposing the leading edge, launching the ball out pretty low for quite a lofted wedge. Lots of flex maintaining the knees, lots of flex maintaining the spine, etc., etc. So from a very shallow start, the downswing is a severe attempt at steepening things to get better contact, but unfortunately that's not going to give us the sort of trajectory or spin control that we need. So now we've got the contact better by narrowing the stance, which makes the ball stay behind the centre of the swing without you moving it way back in the stance, without you pushing the handle way forward, etc. The club now ascends a little bit quicker in the takeaway. The backswing is a fraction more upright, or steeper if you will. And now you can start to shallow things off in the downswing. You talked about feeling the need to release the club, allowing the shaft to recover. So the shaft there is ever so slightly further forward than it was at address, as opposed to considerably further forward than it was at address. More loft, more bounce. You see the difference in the sort of launch angle that you're creating. So now on the right we've got better contact, and we're learning to present the loft of the club to the back of the ball in a more consistent manner. As you come through, you can start to extend. The head doesn't drift forward as much. All the things that you were looking for in your original post on the forum, the information, the move that was sort of getting you frustrated with your golf, getting you a little bit confused about what was happening. And the swing on the right was you narrowing the stance, And then I was asking you to hit the ball a little bit higher just to teach you or remind you of the feels of releasing the club a little bit more through impact, of using the bounce a little bit more when chipping and pitching. And then from there we talked about that being the sort of the difference between flexing and extending, which is illustrated in the through swing. So the player on the left is flexing more, which is steepening things and bringing the launch down. And the player on the right is extending more, which is shallowing things and taking the launch up. And then once you understand that, you can start to develop the short game around that principle and understand the differences between the high and the low shot, which is what I'm going to come to next. Okay, so once we got the basic sort of benchmark ideas in place, we asked you to produce some different trajectories, keeping the setup pretty much the same. You just try to create a lower ball flight on the swing on the right and a higher ball flight on the swing on the left. I've paused both swings at impact. At impact, the shaft is leaning forward more on the lower shot, leaning forward less on the higher shot, which is pretty straightforward, you understand that. As you come through the ball, there's more flexing on the lower shot and there's more extending on the higher shot. And at this stage, that's sort of what I'd expect to see anyway. I'm not too worried about that. Both moves are appropriate for the type of shot that you're trying to play. If you were trying to play a high, soft landing shot with the action that you see on the right, which has got more of your old way of doing things in there, then that wouldn't be terribly appropriate. Hence why I've been having the problems. Just like if you tried to play the low running shot, certainly with a wedge, using the action that you see on the left, that also wouldn't be appropriate. So you can see as we extend more, the angle of attack is fractionally shallower, shaft lean decreases, launch angle increases fractionally as well. So you can start to adapt the two principles of extension and flexion to start to produce the type of shot that you require. But as a benchmark, feet no more than a club head's width apart, weight forward just a fraction, and then from there allow the shaft to recover in the downswing in varying degrees. I would say that if the shaft was leaning forward maybe 10 degrees at setup, then you would want it maybe similar to that at impact, maybe 12 degrees forward, 15 degrees forward. But as a basic rule, if you're trying for a standard pitch or chip, try and return the shaft to where it was at address. You're not going to catch too much harm. I'm just going to spend a minute or two now just looking at the long game work we did, just so you can see the changes in that. Also, in regards to the extension through the hit. Okay, so looking at the long game, and again using that idea of flexion and extension, your original swing over on the left hand side, we're maintaining the flex in the pelvis a little bit too much, and we're flexing forward in the spine a little bit and the neck a little bit. Over here on the right, we're extending the neck much more, we're extending the spine much more, and the pelvis is starting to level out. Now, how's that been achieved? It's been achieved by spending some time hitting balls with the ball way back in the stance, with the weight further forward, probably as far forward as you would feel comfortable with it. So you've got the ball opposite the right instep, you've got the weight, excuse me, a long way forward at setup. So everything is sort of stacked against you getting this golf ball to go up in the air very high. So there's going to be a very much a descending swing into the ball. But I'm asking you to launch each ball a little bit higher than the previous one. So the only way you can do that now is by using your extension. You learn to push up out the ground, raise the belt, tuck the hips. These are all phrases that you've heard online. Phrases are fine, they describe the movements very well. but unfortunately you can't feel that. So extension, as you start to push up and stretch things out, the club starts to come out of its descent, and you're able to launch that ball a little bit higher than you would expect from that setup, and start to introduce some feels into the swing. That drill or that exercise is a conditioning exercise. When you're doing it, you'd expect to see the player hit some pushes and see the ball draw to the right. Certainly don't want to make it go straight whilst doing that. And the idea is to introduce what you see on the right into the swing you see on the left, gradually over a period of weeks. Is it going to look like the swing on the right straight away? No, it's not realistically, but over a period of weeks, as per the images I showed you earlier last week, you'll start to see the swing change and move in the direction you would want it to. You'll also see your ball flight change quite dramatically when you get those changes in there. Well done. I look forward to working with you again in a couple of weeks' time.